Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. Leader Gable, thank you for bringing forward House Resolution 15. Prior to our arrival here on the floor, House Resolution 15 emerged through the Rules Committee, of which you and I are both a member. At least we're in the 103rd General Assembly, and we'll see if we continue to both be included in that process. But it is the Rules Committee that becomes the clearinghouse for legislation for our chamber. Is that correct?
Correct.
And over the course of an entire General Assembly, of the several thousands of bills and resolutions that are filed, all are sent to the Rules Committee, but only some, a small select number of those thousands, emerge from the Rules Committee. What is the process for determining which bills emerge through the Rules Committee?
The intent of the Rules Committee is to look at and process all legislation that comes through it. There is a process in our rules for requesting a legislative measure out of rules. Rule 18G requires any bill pending before the Rules Committee to be immediately discharged. One, if the principal sponsor files a motion that is signed by 3/5 of the members of both the majority and minority caucuses, and each is a sponsor of the underlying bill, and two, by unanimous consent of the House.
That provision within the Rules Committee was not exercised during the 103rd General Assembly that I'm aware of, and that's the only time I've been a participant in the Rules Committee. But understanding that exception that exists, what is the regular course of business, though? There will be moments, a month or two from now, Leader Gable, where I'll feel quite bad for you as you're reading through hundreds and hundreds of bills that will now be referred to substantive committees. Those bills didn't receive a 3/5 majority from both caucuses. How does the regular order of bills emerging from the Rules Committee work?
The majority party reviews all the bills, as I'm sure the minority party does as well.
And in that bill review exercise, what are the considerations and determinants for what bills would be approved to move forward from the Rules Committee?
There are various considerations.
What are a few of them?
I think mostly the review is if they create a positive change for the people of Illinois.
I'm asking these questions sincerely, Leader Gable, because I think many of us want to better understand what happens behind that curtain in bill review. It's the essential process that takes place outside of the public eye that determines what legislation can be then considered publicly. And one of the changes over the last General Assembly appears to be certain thresholds of support that would determine when bills could receive additional consideration. Is there a vote threshold that is required before the Speaker's bill review panel would move forward with allowing public consideration of a measure?
No.
So if a member wishes to have their bill called, are they able to do so?
They're able to make a request.
And that request will be...
For which committee they want the bill to go to.
But we don't, and on the Rules Committee, then receive that request and then form an agreeable assignment to accommodate that member.
It's a recommendation to the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee generally approves them.
This week has been a momentous week, both here in Springfield, but also in the city of Chicago, as we have watched the testimony of Speaker Madigan in federal court. And the subject of the House Rules Committee, of which these rules, I must say, are essentially the same rules that Speaker Madigan had in place. And I'm sure you'll also say that Lee Daniels had rules in place in 1994 for a small period of time, and that's true as well. But these were Speaker Madigan's rules that had existed for decades.
These are not the same as Speaker Madigan's rules, and I didn't serve on Speaker Madigan's Rules Committee.
Did you have an understanding, as the Speaker testified in court this week, Speaker Madigan, that the general rule was that if a sponsor wanted to call a bill, we would call it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you have an understanding under Speaker Madigan, as he testified this week in federal court, that his general rule was if a bill sponsor wanted to call the bill, we would call it?
No, I did not hear Speaker Madigan's testimony. I was here.
Is that arrangement that the Speaker testified to under oath, Speaker Madigan, still the practice in place in this House of Representatives?
You know, I can only speak to the rules that we have now and the rules that are proposed.
Speaker Madigan further testified that if there were a majority of House Democrats against a bill, he would not call it. But if a substantial majority of his Democratic members wanted to call a bill, he would. Is that arrangement still in place today in our House of Representatives?
I cannot say what Speaker Madigan did or didn't do. As I said, I was not on his Rules Committee, and I would really like to go back to, if you have questions about these 104th rules that are proposed.
Leader Gable, is there a mechanism within the rules under normal order for any member of the House of Representatives that can come forward and show that they have an earnest number of co-sponsors on both sides of the aisle? Is there a mechanism in these rules to allow a path forward to have a bill considered publicly?
Yes, there is, and I already described that for you, the process under Rule 18G.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, to the bill.
To the bill.
These rules are very, very important, and they affect everything that we do as a body going forward. Rule 18G has never been a path for success to discharge a bill and allow for consideration. I understand why you might make it really difficult sometimes to move forward certain bills, but these rules, and I hope that the ideas that have been proposed today, Mr. Speaker, can receive consideration, because one of the fundamental problems with the rules is the inability of members to allow their bill to be considered. We have a member of our caucus who was not allowed to present one single bill in the entire 103rd General Assembly. His crime was that he won an election. And I think that is fundamentally wrong, that we wouldn't allow someone to present a bill. Not a bill that's antithetical to the interests of the majority, but a simple honorary bill that may do something for their committee. You know, this House used to be a place, and I hope it can return to be a place, where we would celebrate with each other as each one of the new members gets up to present their first bill. Maybe they'd get a little hard time, they'd have some questions, but it was a point of celebration. They'd receive a round of applause, and we'd all acknowledge that we're here learning together, working as a part of a team. This House of Representatives needs to get back to those days where there is an ability for us to work together. And so often, Mr. Speaker, these rules become the tools for division in the House instead of the tools to unify us. I listened to your words, which were very eloquent and earnest yesterday, and you talked about how we must work together, that the people of our state don't want division. They want us to work together and demonstrate some unity. I hope that some of the issues that have been brought forward today, earnest suggestions, can be taken under consideration so we can work better together. We have an opportunity and an obligation to do more of that as a House. I would strongly recommend that as we move forward in these rules, we have to create different ways for members to have bills considered. The rule of 60 is not serving this chamber well. It is a rule that facilitates division instead of collaboration. I understand the numbers here in the House. Democrats have 2/3 of the representation in this body. Republicans have 1/3. You've heard me argue and take exception to that because it's not reflective of our state. But even under those thresholds, there should be a mechanism for 40 Democrats to join forces with 20 Republicans and put an item up on the board. And we can advance it for consideration and at least have the public discussion that the people of Illinois deserve. The rules as presented are a continuation of a practice that is not working and not serving us all well together on how we can come together in unification. As a result, I urge a no vote to House Resolution 15.